Hello, everybody. This is Anthony for Investors Underground. Today, I have the opportunity to speak with Sam. He's a member of the IU community and he primarily trades US equities from England. You can follow him on Twitter at TradesTurbo. When he's not trading, you can find Sam in the gym, playing rugby, or enjoying a pint at a local pub in the British sunshine. Hello, Sam. Thank you for taking the time to chat with me today. It's a pleasure.
Hello. Yeah, no problem at all. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks. And I understand it's a little bit later in the day for you than it is here in the states.
Yeah, well, it's about 10 o'clock now. Well, 10 p.m., which is well, it's quite normal for me to still be in front of the screens at this time, as you can imagine. Like, market only closed well an hour ago, it's quite normal.
Yeah, I definitely want to ask more about that and what your routine is like. But just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you first got interested and started with trading.
So I think I'm like the British version of a Robin Hooder. I think in 2020 with the COVID mania, I think there was like record sign-ups to Robinhood and they just went crazy. And I signed up with the UK equivalent, which I think like most people in the UK probably have this broker is pretty popular. And it's it's similar in that it's not really that in depth. You just get quotes. And it sort of started like that. Started with that. It started with I've got a sort of a medical background, and I just started buying some COVID related companies, mostly testing companies, um, UK ones. That's how it started, and somehow I managed to, yeah, I suppose I crossed the pond as such.
That's really interesting. So, sort of the pandemic got you started with trading, which I guess is maybe there was a lot of people like that. Why did you choose necessarily the U.S. market? Because COVID was happening around the world, presumably, and so what interested you in the U.S. Markets? And do you trade like the London Stock Exchange or any other exchanges as well?
So now I primarily it's just US equities, and I think there's a couple of reasons. One, I think like if you're gonna, I quickly realized that trading was quite a difficult journey and was going to be quite a tough path. And I thought if I'm going to spend the time learning it and diving deep and for it to really become a passion and then obviously lead on to more than that, if I'm going to focus on one, I want to focus on the biggest one, focus on the one on steroids, not on perhaps some of the smaller ones. And there's just more resources out there as well. It started off where I started seeing quite a lot of Tim Sykes on YouTube and um, obviously Twitter and things like that. And then sort of one thing led to another. I suppose you just slowly get into like that maze of finding people on Twitter. And just most of the people I were coming across were trading um, on the US side. And I just sort of naturally gravitated that way.
Interesting. And what about the market interested you the most? Was it sort of like the challenge of figuring out the market? Was it, just the competition element of it? Was it part of it being the money and the ability to make a living at some point from it? Was it all of those?
It's definitely an all of the above sort of tick box with that one. And it started, so a few things sort of started. So in 2019, I was really unwell. I had quite a rare tumor, which led to like me staying in, I had quite a relatively extensive stay in intensive care. And it sort of reset my life a little bit. And when I come out of that, like I've always wanted to own my own business. I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I've always considered myself that type of person, but perhaps just sort of lacked an idea that I thought would change the world. And then somehow, yeah, I guess when I just come across trading, I just saw it as an opportunity to own my own business, work for myself. And then I suppose like many people, particularly with the COVID boom, like it was relatively easy to find success in the early days, and I think I was quite buoyed by that. And then obviously I realized that actually it's difficult. and there's so much to learn, there's so much to conquer, and like in quite a short space of time, I just feel like I've learned so much about myself. And that's hopefully, I think it's helped me become also not just like a better trader, but a better person as well.
Were you primarily starting with like a paper account? Did you just jump in and start trading with actual capital, or what did that look like?
So I just jumped in. And it's probably something that, like, when I look back on, like, I don't know if regret's the right word because it has helped me. But when I look back, like, I was using too much size too early, and like I had the classic, and it's still like something that I'm still um, working to overcome. Was like my losers were too big and my winners were too small. And I thought like there were periods of time where I thought that size would overcome that. So I jumped straight in, but I probably regret it. And I think if I was to do it again, I would probably still jump in, but just really small size and just try and keep. And I think that I had a quote from, I think it was Huddy that said it. And he said that to be a consistent winner, you need to be a consistent loser, something along those lines. And I think that's something that I'm still striving for now. But when I look back, like I was just all over the place, and I don't think that was a healthy way to start.
What were some of the first lessons that you learned in trading?
So yeah, so probably the single biggest lesson I've learned is don't add to a loser, don't add, because before you know it, um, if it continues to go against you, that loss can really stack up. And it also like it's just a really poor way to trade, because then when even if you go add and then you finally get in the money again, you're instantly hitting the cover button because you're like, oh crap, I was X amount down, now I'm break even. And then you don't actually let the trade work. Then you get on the right side, but you don't give it time to work. So I quickly learned that adding is bad. I think being too aggressive out of the open, there are times for it, but there are also times just to sit on your hands. And like me and my trading friends, we joke that sometimes we're long and we just use the ticker SOH, which just means sitting on hands. So we just be long sitting on hands. It just means we don't plan to trade, or we're just going to be wait for that sort of 10 a.m. window. So I think trying to keep, yeah, so I definitely think trying to keep losses small. But then like something that I'm working really hard on at the moment is once you're on the right side, is how to really hit, get the hammer out and really wield it, and how to add size onto winners, and give them time, let them run, etc. So I think sort of both of those together are probably where I'm at now, working on, is keep losers small, and then when I get a chance, just get the hammer out and really smash it.
Was there one particular trade or maybe turning point where you think your trading really turned around?
So yeah, so when I analyzed my trades for and it's still sort of occasionally true now, but it's less frequently. But like I look back at like 2021, and there were like 6 or 7 trades that basically meant really dug into my P&L. Just 6 or 7. If I had taken those 6 or 7 days off, it was crazy with the difference that my P&L would experience. So it was all the ones that, like, a lot of them are the types that fail quite heavily in pre-market, and then obviously there's a game afoot, and there's suddenly a bid, and perhaps like I'm taking my pre-market bias into the open, and they're all just classic examples of don't rush at the open, be patient. You got a better picture at 10 o'clock. And actually, like, they set up really nicely. But by the time you get to that point where you've taken quite a big loss, like the exhaustion, like it's one of those weird things that you think is like complete nonsense, but actually it's real. And like a lot of the times I'm thinking like I need to be short my emotions, because as soon as I feel like I'm exhausted, I'm tired of this trade, it's not going to happen, it's not going to pull back, whichever way you're looking at it, I guess that's the time actually everyone else is a lot of other people are thinking that as well. And actually, that's the time actually when it sets up quite nicely. So it's taken me a long time to get to that point. And I think now I'm in a better position where A, I'm more patient, and B, actually, if I do take a loss on the perhaps if I am too early or whatever, actually, it doesn't really affect me moving into the next trade. As long as you take, and I think that's another thing is like to reframe taking stops is you're not necessarily taking a, don't think of it as like, and I have to remind myself this all the time, don't think of it as taking a loser. Think of it as an opportunity. Actually, it's probably setting up for an even better trade. It's setting up higher. It's going to be more. There's going to be more range, etc., etc. It just moves them from like one setup into the next.
I think that's definitely something that especially new traders have to figure out is just how important the idea of like trading psychology is and getting your emotions in check, because a lot of times, like you had mentioned, when the time comes to actually get into the trade, one could find themselves just mentally out of capital.
Yeah, it's crazy actually, like the effect that it can have as well. Like you could take, and particularly if you take an outsized loss on the front side. I'm mainly short bias, so if I'm that's sort of how I'm trying to explain things. Um, it can really affect you, and like there are so many occasions where actually you could have lost a couple R on the front side. Obviously, you don't want to do that. You want to be patient, but at the same time, though, like it then gives you a 4 or 5 R trade on the backside if you just were patient or if you just didn't exhaust yourself. And it's just crazy, actually, the effect that it can have. I think that probably, probably in the obviously, I think that's just relating to early stages. I doubt many seasoned veterans get particularly exhausted anymore.
I've talked to some trading veterans outside of this, and they say similar things. Sometimes, just patience is the most important thing. Wait for the trade to set up or get on the right side of the V. Sort of idea.
And that idea is has been like in terms of like moments that sort of like like the light bulb goes off in your head, like Lance sharing the right side of the V. It's just such a nugget of information. And then since then, like that's changed that's changed my trading as well. And there was another chat with on another podcast with I think it's Stan Glusman. Sorry if I said that name wrong. And he talks about like on the short side, he only gets short if there's a red candle. Because if it's my interpretation of that is that if it's a red candle, you can be on the right side of the V, but you can't be on the right side of the V if it's a green candle. Because if you're getting short and vice versa, and like I just think like there's such keep exploring. This is what I'd say to anyone: is just keep exploring. All of a sudden, you just pick up these little nuggets, and suddenly some of them resonate with you.
Do you tend to be more short biased, and is there a particular trade or setup or sector cap size that you tend to focus on, or is it just whatever is in play and moving for that day?
So, and I think this is one of like the key sort of aspects of being in a room. Like obviously I'm in Investors Underground is um, sifting through the noise and knowing what's your setup. And that's again something that I'm sort of developing a skill for, because I tend to trade small caps. I tend to trade quite cheap stuff as well. Like I don't tend to go above 15 $20. I think I'm just more comfortable, and I don't tend to go cheap as well. I'm not really interested in anything. Well, like my broker, you can't short anything sub $1 anyway. But I tend to be like between the $3 to $20 range with with a focus on small caps. And if I am trading anything bigger, it tends to be something that I'm familiar with because I'm looking at it every day. So a good example of that one is AMC. That tends to be something that I trade. Probably like in terms of days traded, it's probably my most traded ticker. And just because it's quite crazy really that the action of that one over the past sort of year or so.
Yeah. And how did you discover that those types of stocks within those parameters were the ones that you trade best and to focus on? I guess that's sort of your niche.
Yeah, you learn. I think you just learn the hard way. Like, and I think it's like subtle things as well. Like my hotkeys are set up for that sort of price range, and as soon as like I like that, for example, there was a day where Peloton was in play, and there was a buyout rumor, and I was like massively biased in the wrong way. Um, and I ended up taking quite a big loss on that one. And like it was just because it was out of my remit. It was like $40 at the time. I think it was like the 30s. My hotkeys weren't set up appropriately, so I was oversized. And there was all sort of these factors that lined up. And I just thought, what am I doing? And like the frustrating thing with that one is I was like bang on. Because it was in terms of like I go to the gym and I had a relatively good idea that Peloton's business model was going to perhaps struggle post COVID with gyms opening, just because I knew that um, I bought my own gym in the garage, and I knew I was pretty tired of using that because I just wanted to actually say hello and see people and be a little bit social. So I thought that, and that led to um, a lot. So I guess the unfortunate answer is the hard way. Um, and like a lot of my data that I've collected and I speak to my friends about focuses on small caps as well. So I know there tends to be there's an edge there. And like my favorite pattern, I try and name my setups just so they feel a little bit more personal. And my favorite was typically I called it the shuffler. And it was something that would just typically push into like 10:30, but it'd always be really stuffy, really stuffy. And that was my favorite pattern because it would usually fade. And I was just playing off the fact that most in that cycle, most higher days were set between 10 and 10:30, and most lower days were set in the afternoon. So I was just playing off two simple things that I knew. I knew that Hod was most likely to be set early, and Lod was most likely to be set towards the end of the day. Whereas with larger caps, I don't have that conviction or that knowledge, and I don't have that experience yet to be like. It's something that I'm sort of working on, but like AMC, for example, like today, it was a great trader, but I just I perhaps had like a big picture move in mind and it didn't quite work out how I wanted it. I'm not covering enough in the right spots. And I just don't have that, I suppose, that knowledge in the back of my mind that actually X is here, Y is here, just wait for it to happen. And then you get that conviction.
That's great. It sounds like you're analyzing your trades, you're building sort of a playbook of trades, becoming very personal with your trades, and you're sticking with a particular relative universe and parameters of stocks that interest you. It sounds like you've done the work and understand more or less what your niche is and what works for you and what doesn't. That's great.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's where like IU's so good as well, because like with the broadcast every morning, we obviously loads of people we all dial in, but actually Nate goes through his plan for the day, but his focus is so broad. So Nate might mention like 6 or 7 stocks that are in play for the day, and like I know my niche now, so I would just probably discount 3 or 4 of them. I'm just not interested. But then 3 or 4 I will ultra focus in, and that will be my priority for the day.
Is there any particular tools or resources, outside of the daily broadcast, of course, that is particularly useful for you and that you use in your trading?
Well, yeah. Obviously, like the broadcast is. I know I just touched on it, but yeah, it's that's like really key to my day now, and it just helps me narrow. And I think that's what's great about IU is that like a chat room, in my opinion, isn't about alerts. It's not about like so and so short or so and so is getting long, or whatever. It's about actually trade ideas. And I think that's what's good about IU is there's such a broad mix of people that everyone's suggesting their trade ideas, and actually you just pick something that resonates with you. So if something's mentioned in Momentum, I'll always check it out. And if Nate talks about something on broadcast, I'll always check it out. But a lot of the time, actually, I'm just like, actually, I can discount, and you discount quite a lot. So broadcast definitely, the pre-market scanner. So I used to pay for a pre-market scanner. Then Max created a fantastic tool. So now there's a pre-market scanner that you get for free with IU. And then obviously the scan every night as well. And then there's been some of the webinars by the likes of Emil. So sort of that really resonated with me, and I'm always checking out his watch list for the day as well. And then obviously like the constant chat through the day, it is just like I said, it's just idea generation, and it's just a case of what resonates and what doesn't. And I think that's one of the flaws that perhaps people make when they join a room, or because you paid a fairly considerable amount of money in some cases. You instantly want to make that back. You instantly want success. You instantly want your decision to be vindicated. But actually, it's quite a difficult process. And I think back to my first month with IU, I have to be honest, I didn't have a clue what was going on. And I can't remember if I spoke to Nate about it or if I spoke to Cam about it, but I said to them that month was a bit of a blur. And then they said to me, "Well, have you watched textbooks? Have you watched textbook?" I was like, "No." "Have you watched Tandem Trader?" I was like, "No." "Right, that might be why." "Do you understand what this is?" And I was like, "No." And then all of a sudden, I was like, actually, it just opened up a whole library of things that I had to do. And then now I think I'm in a position where it didn't come overnight, but now like IU is a massive tool, and something actually I'm not sure that I something I wouldn't want to trade without, and I'm not sure it's something that actually I could, just because it's ingrained in my sort of daily routine now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, those DVDs are classics, and they really set up the basis for teaching traders how to fish for themselves and how to trade for themselves, and to think about setups that work for them. And there's a lot of great independent thought that goes into the IU chat room. And like you mentioned, it is more about presenting ideas and less or not at all about alerts. It's just ideas, things to think about, teaching traders how to trade for themselves, and making that independence a critical component of traders' current and future success.
It is nice when you see an alert and someone's short and or whatever long, and you've already made that move and you've already made that play. That is nice because it's, when two people are independently coming up with the same conclusion, obviously that's reaffirming, and you do feel like, "Oh, actually maybe, oh, Nate's short this, I am as well. That's quite good." But at the same time, though, there's not, like you said, it's there's not really that scope for the alerts, but everything is spoken about, like, and the plan's sort of laid out, and then it's just down to yourself um, acting on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And how did you first hear about Investors Underground?
So okay, I'm trying to think. It must have been through Nate on Twitter. I started off sort of more long bias, and like going back to like all the first trades I made on on the English side, everything was long biased, and I was just, like I said, I was just investing. I wasn't trading. And then I joined. I sort of was leaning, and I joined a long based chat room. To be honest, it just didn't. I found it difficult because I was such a cynic, and I thought all these companies are complete, particularly because like a lot of, like, at the time, and like some of them are like biotechs, and I'm like, "Ah, that's complete nonsense." And with that, my background, I was like, that's nonsense. That's not going to change the world. So I was a cynic. I was a skeptic, and I suppose Nate's style just really, it just resonated with me. And um, like I said, I'm mainly short bias now, but I'm constantly working on ways to shift the balance, because I don't want to be a short base trader. I just want to be a trader and to trade what's in front of me. And I think the long side, I'm still working heavily on the short side, but the long side is something I'm going to have to work even harder on. But it is paying off, because, like, for example, today I traded AMC, I was short, and then I flipped long, and then I flipped short. So like it is it is paying off, like the work is paying off, and I'm starting to become perhaps less, I don't, I'm still going to be a cynic, and I'm still going to find it difficult, and I hated being long, to be honest. um but at the same time, though, like, I'm not really trading. That's not what I'm trading. I'm trading purely the chart, and it could be any 3 or 4 letters or 2 letters, could be the symbol.
Great. Yeah. I saw you in the room today. I mean, see you in the room often. So and the ideas that you present, they're great to see, because I know that there's other people who are thinking similar things, and the input that you're providing is helpful for them. And I'm sure the input that you hear from and see from other traders is helpful for you, whether, like you had mentioned, to confirm maybe an idea that you're having, or maybe you're thinking about taking a trade and you read something that another IU member had posted, and it gives you pause and reflection, keeps you out of a trade that could have cost you.
Yeah, and I think as well, it's just the constant daily reminders as well. Like this is a key level, this is a key level. And I think just having that, it almost does feel a little bit like it's drilled into you, but it's so important, and particularly like with some of the AMCs and some of the larger caps and things like that. Like you sort of have to be prepared to cover quite quickly sometimes because you're reaching a key level. You can't necessarily think like you do with small caps. Like I think this is just going to fade all day, because actually they don't. Sometimes they don't tend to do that. And I think just having those constant reminders, like this is a key level, this is a key level, and you're just constantly thinking about it. Okay, let me wait for it to test. And there are times where like I've made some really like there was LYT last week was one of I think it was last week or the week before. It was like one of my best trades in a while, and it was good because I just waited for a key level from the day before to be tested. Even though, and like talking about like where my biggest losses came from, like this was one that faded all pre-market, looked really weak. And it's one that like a year ago, I would have just been hitting it and hitting it. And I would have averaged in, I'd added, I'd have a terrible average. But this time, actually, I was patient. I knew where a key level was, waited for it to test, waited for it to test. And then as it started coming under, bang, I knew I was on the right side. So yeah, I think it's just all sorts of ideas that go through the chat, and it's just sort of almost like, I don't know, it feels a bit military at times, almost like how it could drilled into you, but actually like it leaves like a really positive scarring. um so yeah, like yeah, absolutely right.
Sam, I'd like to talk a little bit about the role of luck in trading. Like, first of all, do you believe there is luck in trading, or do you think it's a matter of like doing the work, and maybe we just call that luck?
So I think that's a really interesting question, because I don't believe in luck as in like, I don't know, playing the lottery or whatever, but I do believe that we make our own luck in life. And the way we make it is by just continually being consistent, continually practicing, continually putting one step forward. And then the old saying, I think it was by Gary Player, the golfer, the more I practice, the luckier I get. I definitely think that rings true, because before you know it, actually, it isn't luck. It's actually a product of, when you look back, it's actually a product of all your hard work. But it just sort of manifests itself in like a lucky moment, or and it's not necessarily a lucky trade when you keep doing the same thing every day, and then all of a sudden like an outlier move comes. Actually, that's all the hard work you put in every day. And I've tended to find that like my best days come from, I just do the same thing every day. I turn up to the broadcast at 8:50. I make my watch list, I'm making my plans, etc. And then just occasionally, like I might trade, there might be just 3 or 4 setups in a day, and I might have only traded 2 the day before, and all 4 of those work, and I have a really good day. Is that luck? It's a little bit luck, because I'm lucky that 4 setups were there, but at the same time, though, like I'm just doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, so it sounds like the preparation and the opportunity kind of present themselves, and you doing the work is what some might want to call luck, but you did actually prepare for that.
Absolutely, and I think like, and it's the same for like performance. It's something I always say in rugby is like turning up on a Saturday, and well, football, baseball, whatever, turning up for 2 hours and playing that game is the easy bit. The hard bit is turning up on Monday morning when you're a bit tired, but you got to get that gym session in, or that, I don't know, that session in the nets, whatever it is. I think that's what's hard, is actually what are you doing when people aren't watching you. And I think trading is just a real classic example of, actually it's just no one's watching you ever. So it's just a case of, what are you doing, what are you preparing, what are you doing after the market, what are you doing before the market, etc. And I think after a while, like I think Lance talks about P&L being a lagging indicator. Well, actually, you got to put in the work before you get to the P&L point.
So, Sam, I also wanted to ask you about international trading. Are there any recommendations or maybe things to think about that you would propose for traders who are outside of the US and trading US markets?
So I think the first thing you have to think about is time zone, and how that affects you, and perhaps the changes that you need to make to your day. So, for example, and like all American based traders will think this is amazing because I get up at like 9 o'clock in the morning. My typical day is I get up at 9 o'clock, which is equivalent to 4 a.m. US time. But I don't rush. I don't tend to rush to my screens or anything like that. I tend to just chill, have breakfast. I tend to work out, and I'm trying to be at the screens for midday, which is 7 a.m. US time. Obviously, then I'm getting prepared for the day. So the market opens at 2:30 in the afternoon. And I think it's just something to consider because like it's difficult because like I have rugby training Tuesday, Thursday night, so I only have half a day's trading. If you've got plans one evening, because the market closes at 9 o'clock our time. So I think you just got to think about how it affects your life. But other than that, like I don't really see any negatives, to be honest. Um, I know some people will have difficulties with brokers and things like that, but in the UK, we have pretty good access to everyone. There's not really any limitations. So I suppose those are the two things that I would think about, and I suppose it's just about like adjusting your life to trading. And like for me, I used to work out mostly in the evening, but I know now that actually I'm better off working out in the morning, getting it done. I actually tend to think I trade better when I do work out early. And I suppose it's just about adjusting everything around trading and just making trading the focus.
Do you also have the equivalent of like a pattern day trader rule where you have to have a certain amount of money before you could make X amount of trades per week or per day?
So, well, yes is the short answer, but like there are ways like around it. But like most of the big brokers anyway have the same. It's exactly the same. So you still need to deposit. Like I think starting is, but most of them is like 30,000. There's just a few. Like Trade Zero is pretty good for Brits just because you can start. I think from a really small account. I think you can start from like 2,000. And like going back to what we were talking about to start with, actually, I wish I'd done that. Just started really small. I don't know, risking 10, $20 a trade, whatever, $50 a trade, just to get used to it and get that consistency. And so, yeah, I suppose from that point of view, it's the same, but I think we do have an added bonus of perhaps it's slightly easier with places like Trade Zero.
What does your day look like? You mentioned you got up, you know, comparatively late, by U.S. standards.
So I think like the end of the day is the difficult bit because I tend to with trading I tend to try and shut off like it's 9 p.m. So that's when the market closes. That's when I tend to try and shut off. So I will usually do around an hour of analysis, breaking down my trades from the day. What did I miss? Just save charts. And I just try and save as much as I can, and then anything that I don't do, I just shift to the morning and I'll do first thing. But I tend to like because of the time of day, I tend to try and shut off as quickly as I can because I want to be able to sleep. And I think like the times where I've ended up trading after hours and things like that, I tend to have a poor sleep and it tends to roll over a little bit in the and into the next day. But I think that's just me. Like I think like if you could easily, if you wanted to, if you could easily wake up at 11 o'clock local time and then go to bed at like 1 or 2 when the market closes. I just want to sort of have like a quite normal, I suppose, quite a normal routine in that I tend to get up at 9, sometimes a bit, sometimes earlier actually, but I'm sort of in bed 11, 12 o'clock. And I'm just trying to sort of chill really and just try and unwind and just try and, otherwise I just end up, I don't know, I just end up
Yeah.
dreaming charts and
Mhm.
candlesticks and
Yeah.
tape and things like that. And I'm like, that's not healthy.
Yeah, yeah. If you could avoid that, I guess from the perspective of someone in the states, it seems actually kind of nice that you can wake up and do a lot of the stuff that we might be doing here after hours. You have an
Yeah,
entire
yeah.
longer pre-market, so I guess it could just kind of roll over and kind of work out for you.
Yeah, definitely. And like one thing that another mistake, not mistake necessarily, but like one thing I sort of instantly thought is, uh, I'm I'm British. I've got the time zone on my side. I'm going to trade at 4 o'clock every morning, and I'm going to look for opportunities. And I just found myself actually like that's a really long day. And kudos to anyone that's able to do it. Um, I just found myself like it's almost forcing it a little bit. So actually, I'm trying to shift myself. Even in the morning, I'm trying to just chill a little bit, like enjoy breakfast, work out, um, and just try and have, yeah, I suppose just have a relatively normal day.
Yeah. And you had mentioned, writing, doing your write up and your review after the market closes. Can you maybe talk a little bit about what that looks like? And are you analyzing your trades? How do you analyze your trades? Is it with software? Are you doing like input and doing breakdowns? What does your review process look like?
So the first step in my review process, I've got a Discord group with just me in, and I've just got down the channels. I've just got my setups, and I've just named them all, and then I just screenshot and save them, and then often I will put them in Paint 3D, and I would just like annotate them, and like particularly now because it's a case of like I suppose like almost like analyzing a losing trade gets easier because it's a case of was this a setup? Yes or no? Did I take my stop in the correct point? Yes or no? And like there's probably I think like we all fall victim actually of over analyzing it. And you get some people are like, oh well, at 10:31 there was a 1.1 million candle. That means it's not a short or whatever. And you're like, hang on, you you're just trying to back up and confirm what happened. But actually, is it a setup? Is it your setup? Yes or no? And did you stop in the right place? And actually, that's quite a relatively easy process. And now it's a case of actually spending a lot more time analyzing winning trades because it's like, actually, how do I get size here? Did I start in the right point? Could I have started earlier? Could I, etc. And actually, it's a case of I'm on the right side here. Next time this happens, how do I maximize it? And I just, yeah, so I'm annotating, I'm saving everything, and like even in my, in, we've got, I'm created, we've got a few little communities in Discord as well, and something that we promote within the group as well. We're always sharing charts, saving our charts, and we've got our own little folder, got our own little channel again. So it is quite like a lengthy process, but ultimately, like I want to be able to have a library of annotated charts. And just so if someone says to me, "What's your playbook?" I can be like, "Well, this is my playbook, and here's some really good examples of it working. Here's a couple of examples of it not working." Um, yeah, and I do have software, and I'm actually looking at other software as well because I used to use TraderView, and it's just something that I stopped using, perhaps just to try and sort of do it myself. But actually, I think it's actually quite a useful tool.
Yeah, that's great. I think it's always kind of interesting to hear what different people's process is like for analyzing their trades. Some people look at crazy tons of stats. Other people, have a completely separate process. In reviewing your trades, have you, learned anything about your trading style? And simply from reviewing it, have you thought of new plays or setups that work best for you? If you had to say like one or two things that have really stood out to you that have come out of reviewing your trades, what would you say those have been?
So I suppose that the main thing is that I like quite a big picture. I like to get when I'm in a trade, I like to give it time and I like to let it work. And I don't tend to do very well when actually you've got to make quite a lot of quite quick decisions and cover here, short here, whatever, and you're actually trading it quite a lot. So that's lent itself to my focus typically is quite a big picture, and actually I actually don't want to press a lot of buttons. And I think it just sort of focuses your mind on like what's happening at certain time of the day. Like if something's breaking, holding and breaking out later in the day, actually that's quite dangerous on the short side. Particularly if something's making new highs after 3 p.m., that can be quite dangerous as well. And I think it just highlights actually like how to distinguish between certain setups. So like I started off with a shuffler, which was, well, I call it shuffler, but it was like a 10:30 type play. And then it like it wasn't appearing as much, so I thought I had to enhance the playbook, and then enhance to like a sort of midday late day fader, and I just sort of started enhancing the playbook, which I wouldn't have done if I hadn't done all that work. And the other thing that like I look back and I think like, and I always joke that like you shouldn't have feelings in trading. Don't have it's not like a case of, oh, I feel this is going to go down today, or I feel this is going to go up today. Nah, because that's just some sort of random setup that you're trying to justify in your head, or you're trying to do, actually it's a case of, this is what I've seen before, this is what I've seen 100 times before, this is what I've got data on, this is what's going to happen. And I think it's just that constant refinement really. And I think it's key when I'm finding it's key when I'm analyzing my winning trades, is just how do I get ads, how do I lower my risk level, where do I stop, how do I reduce my, etc., etc.
That's extremely helpful.
And I think like coming from that sporting background as well, like I watch my games. When I'm in the gym, I'll often record myself lifting, and it's just because the camera or your trades or whatever, your screenshots, they don't lie. And it just gives you that another perspective that perhaps you're missing. And I think we all have this perception that we're doing extremely well and we're nailing everything, but actually there's always areas to improve on. And I think it's key to work on your, obviously, self-analysis as well, but also look at other people's trades as well, reverse engineer it. And I think particularly like someone like Nate shares quite a lot of charts. It's just, and particularly like when he's on the right side of a trade, you just see it light up. There's just red arrows everywhere. And I think that's just something that I'm looking back on my charts and I'm like, actually, I haven't got that at all. And it's how do I get from, my point to, closer to his point.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely something great to aspire to. Some of his charts, I've told him this, they're almost like artwork.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, and they're so good. Like some of them, like you'd want a poster. And when I spoke with him, I said like that's ultimately what I aspire for, is where I've got like trades that I'm like, I've got to print that out. I've got to put that on my wall because it looks that good, and it's art. Like you said, it's artwork. That's what I'm aspiring.
If it's okay with you, Sam, I'd love to be able to do like lightning round with you. Just
Cool. Yeah, absolutely.
so, what would you consider to be your trading strengths?
I think my strength is my ability to self-reflect, and I and to build on where I was yesterday, and it's just the consistency of actually wanting to be better every single day. Because I think there are aspects of trading which, like I think growing up, like we sort of like we go to a supermarket and we're looking for something cheap. We look for 25% off or whatever. Whereas actually in trading, you don't really do that, because actually something's 25% off could be disastrous. Like, and we used Peloton earlier, 25% off. Well, it went another 25%, and then another. So there's a lot of aspects actually which I don't think are that natural to it. But I think something that like my strength is that I just want to get better. I work consistently every day. Um, and I think that's probably my strength.
Is there one trait or element of your trading that you want to add, something that you're looking to improve in particular?
Yeah, like I said, it's just like working on when I'm winning, it's just to distance myself from what my average is and what the P&L is, and actually just add into the winners, and just try and get some winners that are really, really big, and just try and get that perfect chart. Not that it'll ever be perfect, but like you said, like with a lot of things in life, we won't achieve perfection, but it doesn't stop us from aspiring to get close to it.
And do you find yourself learning more from your winning trades or your losing trades?
Um, Definitely winning trades. And like I said earlier, I think like a case of like something that I need to eliminate is like, and that's the whole thing. Like everyone should have a setup that's called random, and it shouldn't be a good thing. It should be a bad thing. Like if you're saving charts and putting it in your folder called random, that is a bad thing, because we shouldn't be doing random things. So that's sort of what I'm getting from my losing trades, is actually, did I see a setup, or am I just trying to force myself to see that setup? So yeah, I think definitely though, like you learn a lot from your winning trades, because ultimately you're correct with your thesis, and it's just a case of actually how do you maximize the dollars on that.
And do you have any favorite trading indicators that you use?
No, not really. Like I have the standard, obviously I have VWAP. I have a few EMAs up as well. But I don't know. I'm again, like I mentioned, like I was a cynic and I was a skeptic, and I don't know. I struggle with the notion to find that there's some magical indicator that suddenly makes all your dreams come true. Because if that was the case, it would be too easy. I don't believe that it is. So I've got these. I use so those four um, indicators as like a guide, and like ultimately, like what when you're short something, it's like it's a mean reversion trade, and you're expecting it to reverse to the mean. So you have to have an idea of where you think the mean is, and things like VWAP and moving averages do help with that.
What would you say is the biggest trading myth?
There's something that always annoys me a little bit, and that is when people talk about patience. Just because I think patience in trading is a bit of a myth. And what I mean by that is like, obviously, you do have to be patient with a trade, but a lot of it's because you lack. I think when you say I lack patience, no, you actually lacked conviction, or you didn't have a setup, or you're taking a random trade. So like in the same case that like if I offered you $100 and I said, but if you wait 5 minutes, I'll give you 200. You're never going to take the $100. You're always going to take the $200. And I think that's just the same with trading. If you've got the conviction that it's going to go lower or it's going to go higher, actually, are we really testing your patience, or are we testing your conviction in the trade?
What's the best piece of trading advice that you've received from another trader?
So I think probably the two I mentioned earlier is get on the right side of the V, um, and like I said, was like Stan talking about actually tends to only short on red candles, preferably a 5 minute. As we said in one of his chat with the traders podcast. So I think like the right side of the V is, I don't know, it's just something that resonates. And I think that there's two books that I think are quite good for trading that aren't trading related. Atomic Habits by James Clear and David Goggins. It Can't Hurt Me. Um, those two together, I think, just form such a good basis of just slowly, however slow or quick it is, just get better and better and better, and just progress each day. So I think that's key.
And what's one piece of trading advice that you would give to all new traders?
Find your setup as soon as possible. Like however you want to do it, whether it's collecting data, whether it's collecting images, whatever it is, find your setup ASAP. Because the quicker you do that, the quicker actually you can start honing it, and the quicker you'll find success. And I think that was something that resonated, like just happened to me really early. I remember talking about a trade, and someone just said to me, "What's your setup here?" And I didn't know. So it's not a trade that I should be taking. So I think to everyone, you just find a setup, whatever it is, find a setup, and then just keep working on it. You know, keep enhancing your playbook. I think that's something that I probably wasted quite a lot of time with. And it's not like a quick journey, and there are ways of speeding it up. Data speeds it up. Like I spoke about earlier, just talking like what time of higher day, what time you expect it to be, what time do you expect lower day, etc. That can help speed it up. But just find your setup ASAP.
And for anybody listening, what's the best way for them to contact you?
Oh, just I'm only on Twitter, I think, at the moment. So yeah, just at Trades Turbo. And you're more like I said, like you're more than welcome to contact me. And I do get quite a few Brits contacting me, which is great. And it's great to see people, realizing that actually there's quite a lot of opportunity over the pond, and actually perhaps it's the better market. I don't know if better is the right word, but it's different, and it's something that people can, if they want to focus on, they could do really well with.
That's all the questions I have, Sam. Thank you for taking the time to talk with me today. It's an absolute pleasure to get to meet you and to talk to you.
No, thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure, and it's something that I like doing, and that's talking. So
Yeah,
anytime.
and I think you provide a lot of good advice and answers for traders out there. So really appreciate it.
Cool. Thank you.
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell. Thanks for watching.